everyone, and welcome again to another edition of Transcendent. Transcendent is the weekly Facebook Live broadcast of San Antonio in black, white, and brown. What is San Antonio in black, white, and brown? Also referred to as SABWB. As the name implies, San Antonio is SABWB is a leadership space where multiracial and multicultural influencers come together from every perspective to do two things. One is to build trust with one another, and secondly is to collaborate both on the value and the implementation of principles that shape the culture. So ultimately, SABWB's desire and goal and effort is toward shaping the culture of San Antonio. And we do that through leaders or influencers. And that's leaders at every level, from those that might be leading great companies to those who might be just leading in their households or in their schools or in their own communities. Everyone has a leadership sphere. That sphere is not the same for everybody, but everyone does and should take the leadership role seriously because it's influencers that makes things happen. So SABWB is that leadership space designed to build trust among the leaders in the spheres of influence, and then collaborate both on the value and the implementation of principles that shape the culture. Somebody's shaping the culture. It's already happening. And what someone said, that all it takes for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. So when good people do nothing, somebody else's agenda is pushed, and then you have to suffer with it. But our responsibility, particularly as the people of God, our responsibility is to, as Jesus said, to be salt and light in the world. Salt is a preservative. It preserves that which is preserves from decay, while light casts the ability to see upon a situation so you can see clearly and act, therefore, clearly to do what is needed to correct it or to enhance it if it's something that is good and needs to be enhanced. I'm glad you're on here tonight, and I do need you to be a classy person, a CLSS person. Comment, like, share, and if you're watching us on YouTube, also subscribe. Comment, like, share, and subscribe, because the information that we're putting out to you today is critically important. I'm going to be introducing a wonderful friend in a moment who is an expert in the field that we're going to be talking about tonight, namely about the need to achieve school choice in the state of Texas and how not achieving it is actually promoting something called the school to prison pipeline. You and I are going to be talking about that tonight as well. But before we move into those sections with this expert, I want to remind you of your partnership with SABWB. Right now, we're in the midst of a matching challenge gift. Two gifts have been given to SABWB of financial means, one of $1,000 and another of $5,000. Those donors have given those gifts as matching challenge gifts. What's that? A matching challenge gift is given by a donor to provoke you, who are friends and partners of SABWB, to match their gift by the multiplicity of your gifts. So they have been able to give 5,000 one gift and 1,000 another, but you may be able to give 5, 10, 15, 20, or 25 or 100, and all of your gifts together match that. I'm glad to report to you that as we sit here tonight, that over half of that $6,000 challenge gift has been met. But we want to go all the way with that. We want to make sure that we double. What does that do? It gives us an opportunity to turn $6,000 into $12,000 because you've matched the generosity of these matching gift donors. So thank you for it. Thank you for it. But those of you who become our monthly partner with as little as $10 a month, I believe in the power of the small donation. I believe in its power. Because when a lot of us do that, that small donation can move big things, can make big things happen. So we want to give you some big time stuff. The first thing I want to bring to your attention is in your gift package is this little koozie. It's got SABWB written on it. Our drive, what we intend to do is San Antonio Black, White, and Brown, shaping the culture through prayer and action. We do pray, but after you pray, you have to get up and put some feet on your prayer, somebody said, and begin to do something with what you have prayed about, expecting God's supernatural power to help you. This is go around your cold drinks in a hot summer and keep everything, all the sweaty glasses off your hands, and it helps keep the drink cool also. In addition to that koozie handling your cold drinks, here is a cup, an SABWB cup. Now listen, you're going to need this cup. I'm going to Malawi tomorrow, Malawi, Africa. Since some of you may not know what continent that nation is on, it's on the continent of Africa. There are farmers there that grow coffee. I don't know if you know this or not, but coffee is the second most lucrative commodity to oil. So oil is most lucrative. The next is coffee. That's why everybody drinks it everywhere. It is the birthright of Africa. But what happens is that the growers in Africa grow their coffee. People swoop in, pay close to nothing for it, go off and make millions, and leave them in poverty. Through the work of my youngest daughter, Marcia, we have been able to collaborate with some growers that we pay them market value for their coffee, and then turn back after it's brought into this nation and it's sold premium coffee. This is not the Starbucks. Let me just say, it's better than Starbucks coffee. You're going to be able to enjoy it in your cup here. So let me back myself out of some hot water there, and tell you to go ahead and get your cup so you can enjoy some Be Easy coffee. That'll be here not too long ago. While you're sipping on that coffee, you know, leaders are readers. Leaders are readers, and I've got something for you to read. Mm-hmm. 2 books, actually, both of these books was 1 volume, but the author. The publisher told the author it's too much for 1 volume, so he put it into 2, and they are 4 hour time. One of them is called Heaven on Earth. Alan Vincent, the late great Alan Vincent, is the author. Heaven on Earth, and its companion book, The Kingdom at War. There's no more 2 significant books than you can read to help you understand as a Christian what your responsibilities are in the time you now find yourselves, what should you be doing. This will give you some insight to that, as examples are pulled not only from the Bible but from his own life. He and his wife Eileen, his wife is still living and has moved back to England, and our executive director is in a wonderful relationship with her. I'm just so grateful to see how they get along together and how they bless each other's lives. But her husband, and she just finished a biography on her husband's life as well. This thing is going to be an incredible blessing to you. Get your Be Easy coffee in your cup and sit down and do some reading. Now, if you'll become my partner for at least $10 a month, whatever it is you don't miss. I want whatever you don't miss, because it'll just keep going, and we'll keep moving things forward. Now, for some of you, that's $10. For some of you, it's $100. You don't miss $100. And some of you might want to give as God is directing you to give. So thank you for being a partner with us. Tonight, there's some great stuff that we're going to be talking about in the second and third segments of our program tonight. It is about the necessity to achieve school choice in the state of Texas, and what school choice means for the 5 million students that are in Texas, and how a change in that process is necessary. In our first segment, we're going to be looking at that from an expert friend that will join us. And then in our third section, we're going to be talking specifically about how a broken educational system in San Antonio, specified by zip code, is actually feeding the school to prison pipeline and how you and I can break it. Our executive director, Natalie Hart, is going to come now and invite you personally to the I Pray experience, which we have each Friday right here. Remember that Kuzi said, shaping the culture through prayer and action. We believe in prayer. We believe in the power of prayer. Prayer is not just talking to God, giving your laundry list to God. It is waiting in God's presence and allowing him to speak back into your heart so you know what steps to take forward. So we commit each Friday from 10 to 11 right here. So for that prayer meeting, if you cannot be personally, you're invited to be personally with us in this office space to pray from 10 to 11 on Friday. If you're working and can't do it, then go to our webpage, SABWBTX, and listen alone as we pray. If you can't do that either, we archive them on that page, SABWBTX. You can go back to it at any time, listen, and pray along with us as we lift these concerns up before a holy God who releases divine strategy to help us do something about the challenges that we face. So here's our executive director, Natalie Hardy, giving you a personal invite to the I Pray experience, and I'll be right back with my special guest right after that.
Hello, my name is Natalie Hardy from SABWB, San Antonio in Black, White, and Brown. Every Friday morning at 10 a.m., we are at this table seeking the face of God on behalf of our city. And if you didn't know that, I wanted you to know so that you can tune in with us and pray with us, whether we do it on that same time or after the fact, and look at a broadcast and pray with us after the fact. Every voice counts. So join with us on Friday mornings, and we look forward to praying with you. Bless you. Bye-bye.
Yes, that is your personal invitation to join us for the I Pray experience right here in our SABWB offices at 8023 Vantage Drive, Suite 313. 8023 Vantage Drive, Suite 313. Join us live for I Pray, and if you can, as I said, they're archived on our web page, SABWBTX, and you can join us there at any time you're able to pray with us. I have with me a very special guest tonight. I've heard Dr. Johnson speak on more than one occasion, and what comes through every time I hear him is a deep passion, a compassion, and a deep passion for the brokenness that is in Black and Brown communities. He's very closely acquainted with it and passionate about changing what's going on with it. And he is our expert on the subject of school choice and the necessity to change it tonight. So Dr. Johnson, thanks for being with us. And let me just give you space, if you will, to give the people a little bit of your bio on what puts you in this space to deal with such challenging ills, both in the Black and Brown community.
First of all, let me thank you, Bishop Flowers, for having me on your show with you today and bringing me into your space with your audience and to talk about such an important issue of parent empowerment and parent choice. And the reason why it's imperative that we achieve parent choice this legislative session for the state of Texas, but not just for the state of Texas, but for all of America, but particularly for Black and Brown communities. What brought me into this space, I'm one of those guys who was, I'm a 60s baby. I was born in the 60s, actually 61. And,
I got you by a year. I was born in 60.
And so I was born, well, you know how it is that back then I'm a native Texan and Houstonian. And in those days, you were born in a Black hospital. Mm-hmm. And usually you lived in an all Black community.
Now listen, Dr. Johnson, we're not talking about eons ago.
We're talking about 61, right?
Yes. Yeah, this is 1961.
Yeah.
As little as 60 plus years ago, you and I, because I was born and raised in the South, you and I had to put up with the structures of racism that was around us.
Well, the thing of it is, I'm gonna be honest with you. I mean, from 61 when I was born to probably 1972, everybody that touched my life looked like me. The grocery store owner was, G&S Grocery was in our neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
The barber, my doctor, my delivery doctor became my best friend until his death. So I mean, he delivered me, and we just stayed together.
Yeah.
And so everybody that touched my life was African American. So it's not that I've never gained a disdain for any other group or culture, but I just owe so much to so many who've touched my life and my own community. And plus, it's biblical. If a man does not take care of his own home, then he's denied the faith. He's denied the faith and worse than an infidel. So what we try to, what we're doing is we're attending to the weakest link in the chain. I used to ride bicycles when I was a kid, man. I was a pro at my bike. And me and my friend, we had a deal where we had a tool where we could fix the links in our chain.
Yes.
Because if the chain gets messed up, that weakest link, we go to it, we fix that link. That makes the bike run smooth.
Yeah.
And life is the exact same way. Here in Texas, and I know you have some stats you're going to show, but let's talk. Before we get to that, I don't want to jump ahead in my skis here. Let's tell you a little bit about my background and how I came to this space.
Yes.
As I told you, I grew up in an all-black community and born in Houston on Lockwood Drive in 5th Ward. And went to public schools and then went off to the military and came back. But when I came back, I heard about this drug that was ravishing our community while I was overseas. It was called crack cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
So when I came back, I found out that these tales were true. And people on my own block, there were 2 crack houses on the block that I grew up on. So I immediately jumped into action and went to Texas Southern, started studying clinical psychology and drug and alcohol abuse counseling at University of Houston. So I started to counsel my own people because I had a problem in my own community.
Yeah.
One of the things, and this will tell you a lot about my character and how we got here, is I generally see a problem and then I take ownership. Yeah. I actually own the problem. You know, drugs and alcohol abuse was ravishing our community. I own that. Yes. And then did what was necessary to fix it. I opened up a 51-bed residential treatment facility on Lowndes Avenue in 5th Ward for young black males who were in drugs and alcohol. And that's
how long did it take you to fill those 51 beds?
Well, I always had a waiting list of at least 50 to 75 people on the waiting list. But it started out to deal with with young black males. And then we elevated treatment up to dealing with anybody. It doesn't matter whether you were black, brown, white. If you had drug and alcohol abuse problem, people would come there. And for 13 years, we were able to help over 6,000 boys and their families. And then from that, I saw the prevention in. Because see, the guys that I had coming in, 90% of them were not. They were not addicted to ingesting drugs. They were selling drugs. So they saw it as an economic tool. Yes. And so I said, all I have to do is show them how using education to make money the right way could basically transform them and take them way out of the drug game. In which for 80 University of Texas did a research survey on our program. And 86% of those boys got on the right track and never went to addiction.
I have a similar history with Christian Boot Camp here in our city, so I'm resonating with what you're saying.
Oh yeah, and God, from there, God led me to another place. A cousin of mine who's a pastor in Houston came by my office one day and asked me to go to Angola prison with him. He was preaching a revival at Angola. And I said, sure, because I mean, my roots are Louisiana. I was born in Houston, but my parents are from Louisiana.
Okay.
Both my mom and my dad. They migrated to Houston.
Mm.
And so my grandparents and everybody's in Louisiana. They used to scare us saying, look, you don't act right, you're going to end up going to Angola. Because if you know anything about Angola, it's the largest maximum security prison in the free world. It's 18,000 acres, and it was the bloodiest prison in America. And if you were a black man in the 60s, 50s, all the way from 70s, maybe 80s on back, it was a death sentence to black men.
Yeah.
If you were sent to Angola, you were going to either die on that side and that, and never make it by without a miracle.
Been made about the horrors and the violence of Angola. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, so Eddie came by and he asked me, and usually I don't just jump up, but I just jumped up and said, okay, I'll go with you to the revival. And we went down there and we had such a divine experience in that prison. I was compelled to do something there. Again, I'm taking ownership.
Yes.
Of the problem. And so I went back to my pastor, who's George Foreman, and I said, George, you never guess where I went this weekend. He said,
the boxer, George Foreman?
Yeah. Okay. So I said, Angola. He said, you haven't been back to Africa that fast. I said, no, Angola prison. And so he said, man, I'd like to visit. I was telling him about all the things that I saw. And he said, I'd like to visit. So he and I and Jim Brown went down and he preached a sermon and Jim did a banquet. And so they had an idea to build churches inside of prisons. And I thought it was a great idea. So I told them that I would help them out and get the first couple churches built.
This is the football player, Jim Brown. Yeah,
Jim Brown.
And the world champion, George Foreman. You just throw the names out there like.
Yeah. I see George every Sunday, my pastor.
Yeah.
And so Jim came down and we did that thing together. And so they asked me to be on a board. They started up a board, the Louisiana Prison Chapel Foundation. And so we raised the money and we built one, and then we raised the money, we built another. We had to raise $1 million per facility. And we have a 99-year agreement that the facilities could only be used for religious and educational purposes.
Religious and educational. Okay.
That's it. You couldn't put cots in there, and you couldn't go in there and sleep or nothing like that. Just religious and educational purposes. And so I had come on board to try and help do a couple of churches, and because it was a novel idea, and God had touched my heart. And what ended up happening was after the fourth month, they said, look, Richard, would you chair this board for us? And I said, I agreed to do it. And it turned into 17 years and 21 churches inside the prison.
Praise God. God.
And I tell my wife, I said, it was like a 17-year out-of-body experience.
Yeah.
The world was going on around me, but I was caught up into something way bigger than myself. And I can only explain it as God, carrying me through, because I had never built a church. I had never even built a doghouse. But God takes unlikely people like me. And we built 21 churches. They're functioning right now, and they get over 1 million
churches inside prisons.
Inside prisons in Louisiana. We actually have Angola's so big. We have 7 in Angola because it's around 8,000 men.
Yeah.
And so each outer camp has its own church.
So you're very closely connected to this problem from the time of doing beds for substance abuse to building churches in the prison. You are an eyewitness to the devastation that poverty and the things that make for poverty
Mhm.
the havoc that it wreaks on our communities, particularly our Black and brown communities.
The
How does that
consequence,
parlay into school choice?
the consequence of failing school. See, I spent 30 years dealing with the consequences of failing
Mm-hmm.
schools.
Mm-hmm.
All those boys that were coming to me, 6,000 of them, and they actually lived there on my campus. It was a
Yeah.
51 bed facility. They lived there. They went to school there. They
Yeah.
woke up. They play everything there
Mm-hmm.
because they were kicked out of regular school.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. I did the same thing here in the city with Christian Boot Camp. Lived with them.
Yes, absolutely. And so it's the consequence of the failing schools. The schools had thrown them away. The judges said, "Look, if you can't make it at Golden Eagle, you're going to TYC."
Mm-hmm.
And 86% of those boys did well. They graduated from high school, went to college, or went to the military,
Mm-hmm.
or went
Mm-hmm.
into the workforce. So, but they were on a pathway to prison. So we spent 13 years working with that population. Then I spent 17 years working actually inside the prison.
Inside the prison.
I've been inside of every prison in the state of Louisiana and most in the state of Texas and Mississippi.
Yeah.
You know, so I had an opportunity. God has allowed me to have an opportunity to get a hands-on visual and touch and feel of the consequences of failing school.
Mm-hmm. The consequences of a failing school system. You've seen it firsthand. So how important is it then that we are able to achieve school choice in the state of Texas? How, from your perch, from your perspective, how important is it for us to achieve that?
Life or death. That's how important it is.
Wow.
Life or death. Because let me tell you, 70% of the folks who are incarcerated are reading at a third grade level. 70% at a third grade level. There's a direct correlation between failing schools and thriving prisons.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they call it the school to prison pipeline.
Because by the third grade, if they're not reading at a third grade level, then the analytics says that child that's not reading at a third grade level is going to end up being involved in the correctional system. So they start building prisons based on those analytics.
Absolutely. And they actually, what happens is, just like you and I, if we don't achieve success at a certain thing by a certain time, we unplug.
Right.
They and statistics will say that they drop out around the 8th and 9th grade. They've dropped out at the 4th grade level when they've dropped out psychologically. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then the system just pushes them till they just basically walk out.
Right.
Physically walk out. And so it's important. This is our time. This is our moment for school choice. And let me tell you the reason why. Every program that we had tried in prisons had failed up until we brought God in. We opened the door and let God in.
Yeah.
And I know folks will say they've had Kairos for years. They've had folk coming in and out for years. Mm-hmm. But we had never set up a beachhead, which is the actual physical church. Mm-hmm. And then we brought in the New Orleans Baptist Seminary for those inmates who were preaching and wanted to become pastors to earn their degrees in theology and develop congregations. We have right now in Angola, we have some pastors who have a congregation of 1,000 members in one church inside the prison.
Yeah, yeah.
You see,
go ahead. Mm-hmm.
But here's what was tied to their teaching them how to read beyond a third grade level.
Yeah,
they were taught how to read the Bible. See, when in those theological courses, we were teaching them about biblical things, but they were reading. Their reading skills improved, their lifestyles improved, and that created a transformational effect inside of some of the worst and dark places in America.
So you see that has been the transformative agency within the prison system itself, but that prison system population has been growing as a direct consequence of a failing school system.
Yeah, my grandmother used to say, My grandmother used to say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound
Yeah.
of cure.
Yeah.
We have to cut off the bleeding. We have to stop the bleeding.
Mhm.
That failing school system is allowing folks to continue to go into that pipeline.
Now I'm gonna ask you a question here, kind of setting you up for our third and final segment for tonight. But I want to lead into it with this question: seeing that the present failing school system is damaging Black and brown communities the most, why is it that it's largely Black and brown communities that work to keep up the status quo where the failing school systems is concerned? That seems like such a departure from the path we should be taking.
Yeah.
Why are we still on that, propping up a system that is leading our young people from school to prison?
Hosea said it best. He said, our people perish for the lack of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And the general population just don't know. We've done at TPPF, we've done a survey. 80% of African American voters vote to approve school choice, and also 81% vote to have the dollar follow the child. But I'm gonna be honest.
Now wait a minute, Doc. You said that in minority communities, the Black community, when they are surveyed, the actual parents themselves.
Yeah, the people themselves, the constituents themselves.
Right. Rather than have their child relegated to a failing school in their own community, they would rather be faced with the challenge of moving that child to an educational institution of their choice that they believe is better suited for their child, and have their money follow that child to that institution.
Over 80%.
So then what's going on? Why are we not there?
Well, one of the things we're going to have to do, man, we're going to have to get the folks that they elect, the elected officials, to get on board and see the urgency of the moment. See, because unless we put it out there that these 80% of voters who are African American, Hispanic want that, if that goes quiet, if it goes silent, like you mentioned earlier, guess what will happen? Absolutely nothing. Status quo. But this is the reason why we have to really get out and share what the voters really want. And they're doing it with their feet, because we have 50,000 people on the waiting list for charter schools.
Yes. Yeah.
You know,
so that tells us that they're not satisfied with the public school product. Yeah. They at least.
Let me say this. There's an element within our population that the public school is not equipped to deal with. You see,
you got to expand on that.
Because I'm gonna tell you, we had all kind of programs in the prisons, but until we went in and set up a beachhead for God to do His thing, transformation did not happen.
Couldn't take place.
It did not happen, and that's why I like the Supreme Court decision, Carson versus Macon, that says it's discrimination. It's discriminatory to deny religious-based educational facilities and institutions based on religion. It's discriminatory. So that opened the door for us to give God a chance in this deal. And look, man, I've seen how God can go in and transform the worst prison in America, Angola.
Yeah.
At that time when we went in there, they were having 3 to 4 murders at least every other day, sometimes every day.
Yeah.
After we set up God,
you had violent people, you had violent criminals, repeat offenders who didn't even want to go to Angola. They themselves.
No. Yeah. I'm gonna tell you something, man. Let me tell you. But after God set up the church movement, and Jesus went on the move in that prison and throughout the state, It was 9 years before they had a fatal incident. 9 years. See, I've seen the miracle of God. I've seen the power and potency of God. But what we have to do,
if we can get that kind of result in prison, what kind of results could we get at schools?
Exactly. And let me tell you something, and you know this for a fact. I'm preaching to the choir, but let me speak to the audience. Let me speak to the audience simply because most churches have facilities. Most churches have facilities. The foundation of education began in the church. We got away from that and then brought it in with Horace Mann and brought it out to the public. But with this opportunity for dollars to follow the child, it opens the door for every pastor who God puts on his heart.
Come on.
To engage in the school and educational process.
We had at Faith Outreach Center, we had a school for 15 years. We had a private Christian school for 15 years. But it began to be burdensome for people to pay both the private school tuition and their taxes.
Right.
It's their money. It's not the state's money.
There you go.
It's taxpayer money. So we had to close our school, but because of the prospect of money following the child, we're already making plans.
Doc, let me tell you something. Every church, see, we can handle young black boys. We're equipped for that because the God has put it in us all the way coming down from slavery to Jim Crow. As black men, when I went to Africa, and you on your way to Africa tomorrow, when I went to Africa and I went through the rites of passage, they say we send the boys out with the men to bring them across the bridge into manhood.
Yes.
You see, we're here as men of God in the church, man. It's our responsibility. We have to own that. Those young black males out there, and I'm saying, look, we have enough love for all.
Yes.
Black, white, brown.
Yes.
But
San Antonio, black, white, and brown. Yeah.
But right now, black people in Texas make up 12.4% of the state population and 33.4% of the state prison population.
You're saying it right here in this PowerPoint.
There's 40,000 young black men locked up in prison right now.
40,000.
40,000 black men.
That's in Texas alone.
In Texas alone, and 2,000 black women. But 40,000. What if we could reduce that number in half?
I'm sure you're aware of this, but the 13th Amendment of the Constitution bans slavery except were charged with a felony and incarcerated. So when you say we have 40,000 black men in prison, you're actually saying we have 40,000 slaves.
Absolutely.
Still, and 2,000 women slaves.
Let me tell you something, Doc. You hitting the nail right on the head. 13th Amendment said neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist except when an individual has been duly convicted of a crime in America on any soil governed by America. Except when you've been duly convicted of a crime. So that loophole throws you back into slavery, where you don't have a right to vote.
Right.
You don't count, really. See,
you become, in terms of your having a voice to shape the culture that you have to live in, you have no more voice.
You don't have a voice. And so what we are saying today with parent empowerment, see, I'm a parent. I have 4 children. I have 2 boys and 2 girls.
Me too.
My name is Richard Johnson. All of their last name is Johnson. So if I say go left, go left. If I say go right, go right. Doc, let me tell you, man. So I'm a parent, man. I care. I love my kids just like you love your kids.
Right.
And we love all children, but it's hard to outlove me with mine. It's going to be hard to outlove you with yours.
You're right. You're right.
So in owning this problem, you ever heard that thing? It's not your fault, but it is your problem.
Right. Right. Right.
And to the audience,
that's the situation today.
I'm gonna tell you something to the audience. Hey guys, it may not be your fault, but if you are a black man in America and in Texas, it is our problem.
I want to drill down a little deeper, and we're going to go to commercial. And when I come back, we're going to focus all of this stuff right here, because when I got your info, Doc, concerning San Antonio, and I looked at some of these zip codes, I was shocked.
I've done it around the state. I know who's where.
This is my problem. San Antonio is my city. This is my problem. And I believe that there are other leaders right here in this city who will be able to join you, Dr. Johnson, and others at the Texas Public Policy Foundation on September the 9th. We'll talk about that when we come back. And then a follow-up meeting right here in San Antonio on September 21st. Because we have to own this.
Right.
We've got to own this problem, and a way to solve it is the achievement of school choice, where the money follows the child here in the state of Texas. Let's go to commercial, and we'll come right back right after that. Hello, everyone. I'm Charles Flowers, your host for Transcendent. Transcendent is SABWB's online weekly broadcast, aired here on Influence's platform. Join me and other key leaders from various pillars of influence which shape the culture of San Antonio for innovative and strategic dialogue. Each week, we will address core community values and principles that need to be restored and re-implemented into our culture of our great city. This may often necessitate identifying where these values and principles are being compromised and reflecting on the damaging impact that such actions may have if left unaddressed. But ultimately, we want to take the conversation beyond ordinary limits, exceed the normative boundaries, and implement bold, time-tested principles across the pillars of influence in our city, which will result in the positive transformation of the culture. I look forward to visiting with you each week here on Transcendent. So you can see the need that we have to stay on top of information like this and bring information to you that you can act upon. And you find out is that it has already been action has already been taken in that direction by men like Dr. Johnson and others. So, Doc, I want to start looking at San Antonio particularly tonight. And I was shocked when I found out, because I don't live in a community that you would normally ascribe these statistics to. I mean, if you drive through my community, you wouldn't come away with this.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't come away with this conclusion in terms of, what you see. But on your PowerPoint, and if the producer can put this up, this is one called the correlation between literacy and incarceration. The San Antonio zip codes that fall within the top 30 feeders to the Texas prison system. I want to read that again. The San Antonio zip codes that fall within the top 30 feeders to the Texas prison system. These zip codes that we're about to call out actually aid and feed the school to prison pipeline.
Sure.
And you have also indicated on this particular slide the number of prisoners that are currently residing in Texas prisons that have come from these zip codes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a costly measure, but until you bring the data up and you really take a look at it, Bishop, that makes it real to you.
Yes, it's kind of like
when I was doing alcohol and drug treatment for inner city boys, and they would come and stay a minimum of 90 days, and sometimes they stay a whole year. But you know, when you like my grandfather used to plow the field in Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
He would plow the whole field until he got up to the end of the last row. Then he turned around and look at all of the work that he had done, which was massive,
Mm-hmm.
over 100 acres, massive, and look up the sky and say, God, now I've done my work. Give me what you want me to have. But when you look at the numbers, when you see in one zip code is 400 men, if you see in the other one is 300, and those numbers, and you imagine in your mind 400 people standing in front of you,
Mm-hmm.
coming out of one zip code. You know, because back in the hood, you know, we used to always say, man, when a guy go to prison or something, say, well, he off the ground.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
when he come back, say, yeah, he back on the ground. You know, he
Yeah.
landed, he back on the ground.
Yeah.
It's like they evaporate and you don't
Mhm.
see them anymore.
Right.
So it's kind of out of sight, out of mind.
sight, out of mind.
But when you think about 400 people in one zip code that's gone into the criminal justice system through this school to prison pipeline, it's like they're evaporating, but that's why we have to bring it to people's notice. Because those folks in the same neighborhoods, I grew up in some of the zip codes in Houston
Yes.
that's feeding into the school to prison pipeline, a part of that same study you have there. And until you look at those numbers, it don't get real to you.
It got real to me, Doc. It hit me real close. 78207, 486 inmates contributed to the prison system from that zip code. 78210, 309 inmates contributed to the prison system from that zip code. The third is my own zip code. I live in 78228, and we've contributed from that zip code 307 prisoners into the prison system. We fed that school to prison pipeline as a direct consequence. I want to say this to preachers and ministry leaders who are listening. As a direct consequence of a failing school system, we have aided the prison system with 307 more prisoners, who are also 307 more slaves. We're actually increasing the slave population in America due to failing schools. Now, you cannot hear that and not do anything.
Right.
Not if you have, this whole social justice move in your heart. You can't hear that and say to the leaders. So Doc, I want you to validate with me here that in 78207, the Texas senator that is over that zip code is Senator Menendez.
And he have to own it. See, here's the thing. Here's the key to fixing a problem. You have to own the problem.
You gotta own it.
But if you don't own it, then it doesn't belong to you. See, the reason
there are
why
some factors that keep these guys from owning it.
But let me tell you something. This is what I told my cousin Eddie. He's a pastor. I told Eddie. We were standing in the middle of the field in Angola. Angola is 18,000.
You ain't talking about Eddie Long, is because you don't already dropped George Foreman and Jim Brown. You ain't talking about Eddie Long.
Eddie Winslow. So my cousin, me and my cousin Eddie, we're standing in the middle of 18,000 acres. And there are thousands of black men, because see, Louisiana is different than Texas and Arizona and California. Louisiana and Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, it's either you black or you white, you know.
Right.
So most of those guys out there look like us.
Right.
And we're standing out there in the middle of the field with thousands of folk working in the fields, right? And I said, Eddie, you know why we here, man? And we're not saying that these guys did something, they supposed to be here or something like that.
Yeah.
You know why? I say because they look like us. and we're owning it. We have now empathized. There's a thing in therapy, you can sympathize. That's what most of our leaders are doing. Most of our elected leaders, not all leaders, most of our elected leaders, they sympathize with that 400 or something coming out of that zip code. They don't empathize. You have to empathize. When I empathize, then I walk a mile in your shoes. Then it becomes my problem too.
Here's where I'm going to challenge you with that, Doc. I believe wholeheartedly what you said about empathy versus sympathy. But there are some factors in this political world that will let an elected official dismiss the woes of their constituents because their pockets are being lined or their political funds are being funneled into their hands, and they will sit on top of and talk the game, talk it up, but don't own it.
Right.
They won't own the issue.
Right.
So tonight, the reason I want to call the names is because I want those of us who are living in these districts, like one of them is my zip code. I want you to know who these people are, and then and I want to give an invitation at the end of this time, Doc, to what you guys are doing at TPPF in September 9th.
Sure.
So move with me, if you will, through this litany of names here. In 78207, the state senator is Menendez, and the two state representatives is Diego Bernal. It wouldn't be the first time I've dealt with Diego Bernal. And Ray Lopez. Ray Lopez is a former city council person. So you serve at a city council level, you dot your I's and cross your T's, then you get moved up to a state level. So it becomes a career path rather than a means to represent the ills in the community and fix them.
Right.
This is now a career path. And they're in District 5. The council person in District 5 is over this zip code that has produced over 400 new slaves. So in 78210, District 3, Lloyd Doggett is the U.S. Congressman. Elizabeth Campos is their state rep, and Senator Rolando, did I say his name right? I can't even read my own writing, Doc.
Roland Gutierrez.
Roland Gutierrez, that's why I didn't finish spelling his last name. Senator Roland Gutierrez in 210. Right here in 78228, where I live, Trey Martinez Fisher is our state rep. Ray Lopez shares that district with him. Senator Jose Menendez. If these folks knew, Doc, if they know what you know, if they know what you know, then they should be doing what you're doing.
Absolutely.
They should be exercising every possible effort to cut off that school to prison pipeline rather than defending a system because the teachers' unions forces them to defend a system that is broken and that is hurting our own communities.
You know this, in the King James Version of the Bible, the word free or freedom is referred to 101 times. The truth shall make you free. And whom God sets free is free indeed.
Yeah.
See, sometimes I don't think it's going to be the first move of the politicians to free us. I believe in my heart of hearts that it's going to be men who are spiritually guided by
I believe
God.
you're right. I believe you're right.
And and I believe that it's our job to provide leadership for those folks who are in the political realm, because they obviously don't have the commitment to freedom like we do. You see, and it's always been men of God who fought for freedom.
Always.
It's always been men of God who fought for freedom. Politicians,
not only in this country, but around the world.
Globally.
Yes.
It's always been men of God. And so that's why we reach out to pastors, see, because pastors have already taken up that mantle for God to represent God and Jesus Christ here on this earth. And Jesus gave us the greatest example. Many times I got tired going up and down that road, over 7 cars and a million something miles. But it was only God who kept me, to see it to the end and build the last one and the last church to complete it.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen in this fight.
I don't deny the fact. In fact, we're doing something here in the city of San Antonio in January of 2023 that replaces the voice of the body of Christ into this universal struggle toward freedom and justice. The body of Christ has an irreplaceable voice there, as proven by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a preacher, not a civil rights activist, a man of God who took the gospel and put it in the civil arena. I believe that. And I'm with you on that. But Proverbs 29:2 says that when the righteous are in authority, people rejoice. But when the wicked bear rule, people mourn. So whether we rejoice or mourn is directly reflected on who's in authority. And if these men and women, if these men and women are sitting on top of the stuff that you know, and they know too,
sure,
and are not doing anything about it, that's not a service to their constituency. That is a manipulation and a crime against their constituency.
But here's the good news. Martin said, truth crushed against the earth will rise again.
Will rise, yes.
No lie could live forever.
Right.
You see?
Right.
So the deal is, as we press the truth down to the masses, they will rise. We have to make it plain so that they can understand it.
So give me a place where they can do it. They can learn what you know. Something's happening at TPPF next month, September the 9th.
Absolutely. September 9th, we're having the State of Black Texas Workforce and Economic Development Summit, where we're going to cover education and workforce training. We're going to cover business and entrepreneurship. We're going to cover poverty alleviation, higher education. But when we talk about education reform, we're going to talk about parent empowerment, empowering parents to make the decisions for their own children. Yes. And then also allowing this policy, which the governor has already brought forward. It's the Parent Bill of Rights, giving parents 100% control over their children's education, including the dollars found in a child. If they choose a public school, so be it. If they choose a private school, so be it. If they choose a charter school, if they choose the homeschool, but their tax dollars need to follow their child so that institution can be sustainable and flourish and be able to help people reduce the amount of folks who are going into the school to prison pipeline. I would like to see, and I believe it's possible, Bishop, I believe it's possible for us to take that 33.4% and reduce that 33.4% down significantly and watch it go down every year.
If it can happen in Angola prison with a 9-year stretch of no violence in the worst prison in the world,
Yeah.
certainly in the country. It will happen in the school system as parents start making the decision as to where the environment is most suitable for the education of their sons. And you're right, the community is equipped to handle it
And let me
because
tell you,
we've been forged to handle
let
it.
me tell you, it has been a church who has saved us in Black America ever since we've been here.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have nothing but the church, man.
Right.
I remember down in the country with old Reverend Robert, man. You know, he would come around on his tractor and he'd do some of the field. Hey, man, and they would take up a collection and everybody cooked chicken and all that on the weekends, man, and brought it to the church. Say, man, we didn't have nothing but the church, man.
Right.
And right now, we're in a crisis situation and we must let God in. The Supreme Court has already opened the door.
Yeah.
They've opened the door.
I want to make a personal invitation to every ministry leader and every pastor that is in these zip code areas. If you live in or your church is in 78207, 78210, 78228, 78237. I'll tell you what we're going to do prior to the 9th of September. We're actually going to locate the churches that are in that district, and you'll be receiving a personal invitation from me to join me at TPPF on the 9th of September so that we can be armed as community leaders and men and women of God with the information that we need to go forward and be the salt and light that Jesus commanded us to be in the Gospels. For those of you who your justice bone has been fired up tonight and you want to be an instrument in the hand of God to own this issue and begin to be a voice for it so we can see radical change take place in the school system and retrieve our sons and daughters, cut the school to prison pipeline off and retrieve our sons and daughters as the champions of kings and queens that we know that they are. Then 9 September, you need to mark your calendars. Doc, how do they let you know they're coming on the 9th of September?
What I'm going to do is I'm going to send you the piece the advertising piece.
Okay.
You know, the link. I'm sorry, the link. I'm going to send you the link, and you can send the link out and make an RSVP.
Okay.
It's an RSVP on the link. So I'm going to send it to you, and then you can send it out to all the pastors in those zip codes. Okay. And then they can RSVP, and we will be expecting them. We will have breakfast in the morning, and it's a free summit. We'll have breakfast in the morning, then we'll have a keynote speaker at lunch, and lunch will be served during the time that the keynote speaker is up. So it's a working summit, because we don't want to just give you information. We want you to take that information and then act upon it. And so
I have a wonderful friend here in this city. I call him my big brother because I feel like he is. Pastor Randall Draper celebrating his birthday on that day, but it's in the evening. So I'm going to go up to TPPF, do that conference all day, and drive right back into town to celebrate his birthday with him and the great Maranatha family that evening. But if you're here in the city of San Antonio and you want to be armed with the kind of information that you see that Dr. Johnson has a hand on and a history with, then you need to be at TPPF on the 9th of September. We're actually going to have a follow-up meeting from the 9th on the 21st of September. So if you can't make the 9th, you can make the 21st. We're going to start putting things in place in order for you as pastors and ministry leaders in our city to own this problem and trust God for the solution of it. Dr. Johnson, I can't thank you enough. You and I could go on. We're out of time, but we could go on and continue to talk about this issue. But thanks for being with me tonight and helping get this word out about what is happening with the Texas Public Policy Foundation on 9 September and why it's important for us to be in. You got me fired up, man. I saw my own zip code in here.
Well, I tell you what, man, we're in this fight. We're in this fight. And let me tell you something. We're winning this fight.
Yeah.
We're not going to lose this fight, Bishop. At the end of the day, we're going to pass that. The bill is going to get passed. Then what's going to happen is God is going to allow men and women of God to work with our own children and then cut off the school to prison pipeline. God's going to do that.
Yes.
Just let him use you. Just let him use you.
All right. Thank you so much. Listen, everybody, this is why Transcendent is so important to you, because people like Dr. Johnson and others who are experts in this field, passionate and compassionate, that have the knowledge and have the resources of knowledge that you need to be able to be salt and light as Jesus commanded us to be in the world. I need you to comment, like, share on YouTube, subscribe, so that this voice that you're hearing can find its path throughout the social media world and more people come to know about it. All right, we will see you again next Tuesday right here for Transcendent on Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. We'll see you. God bless you. Love you big. Bye-bye now.